Magandang gabi sa mga mahal naming manonood. Ang ating online program ay magsisimula sa loob ng ilang minuto.
Rizal Park, Luneta. Isa itong mohon, isang bantayog, isang landmark. Mga kaibigan, mayaman man o mahirap, taga-probinsya man o taga-Maynila, Pilipino o dayuhan, dito pumupunta upang mamasyal, magsaya, magpalakas, magdiwang. Ito po ang pinakaimportanteng parke sa kasaysayan ng bansa. At sa maraming pagkakataon, dito tayo nagkaroon ng kabayanihan, trahedya, pagkilos, pagdiriwang, at pagsasaya bilang isang bansa. Ang Maynila ang kabisera ng Pilipinas. Pero ang Rizal Park Luneta ang puso ng Republika. Makasaysayang araw po sa inyong lahat. Ako po si 𝘱𝑗𝐽𝑎, isang public historian. Samahan niyo po ako sa Rizal Park Luneta Walking Tour.
Magandang gabi sa inyong lahat. Malugod po naming binabati ang lahat ng mga nakikibahagi sa ating online program para sa gabing ito. Ang proyektong ito ay handog sa inyo ng National Parks Development Committee at ng Department of Tourism. Bago natin simulan ang ating programa, mayroon lamang kaming kaunting paalala para sa mga manonood. Una, ang ating online program ay mapapanood ng live sa ating Facebook page sa facebook.com/npdc.ph. Magiging available ito on demand pagkatapos ng ating live discussion. Hinihikayat po namin ang lahat na i-share ang webinar na ito sa kanilang mga kaibigan sa social media. Ikalawa, nais naming marinig ang inyong mga komento at makita ang inyong mga reaksyon sa live discussion. Para sa Zoom participants, kung kayo ay may mga tanong para sa ating speaker, maaari ninyo itong iparating sa amin sa pamamagitan ng Q&A button na matatagpuan sa ibabang bahagi ng inyong screen. Para naman sa ating mga viewers sa Facebook, maaari ninyong i-comment ang inyong mga katanungan sa live video na ito. Sisikapin naming masagot ang lahat ng inyong katanungan sa nakatakdang oras. Panghuli, ang mga makakakompleto lamang sa pagsagot ng ating online survey form ang makakatanggap ng copy ng kanilang digital certificate. Kaya abangan po ninyo sa chat box at comment section ang online survey link na aming ipopost. Paki-review po ang inyong entry details, lalo na ang inyong pangalan, bago i-click ang submit button. Dahil ito po ang aming ilalagay sa inyong digital certificate. Iyon lamang po ang ilang mga paalala.
Isang magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat and welcome sa ating 32nd webisode dito sa Park Conversations na pinamagatang Wellness for Older Adults. Ako po si May-Ann, ang inyong host para sa Park Conversations ngayong gabi. Ang special webisode na ito ay handog sa inyo ng National Parks Development Committee at ng Department of Tourism bilang bahagi ng ating pagdiriwang ng Elderly Filipino Week. Under Presidential Proclamation Number 470, Series of 1994, ang first week of October is declared as the Elderly Filipino Week. During this celebration, we honor the significant role and contributions of our elderly to the society. To culminate this celebration, we are holding a special Park Conversations webisode as our way of providing a program that is beneficial to the senior citizens, their families, and the rest of the community that they serve. Tonight, we are also honored to be graced with the presence of Dr. Gia B. Sison, a full-time physician, a mental health advocate, a social media influencer, and a breast cancer survivor. Our speaker is a practicing medical doctor specializing in occupational medicine and is a graduate of the University of Santo Tomas. She herself is a breast cancer survivor for almost 4 years now and is currently the Philippine leader for Live Strong Foundation and the National Advisor of the Youth for Mental Health Coalition. She is the former Chief Medical Officer of Global Telehealth Incorporated and a co-founder of #HealthXPH, which promotes the responsible use of social media in healthcare, amongst others. She was a previous project consultant to the World Health Organization Western Pacific Regional Office on health lifestyle in the workplace. She is currently the head of Makati Medical Center's Wellness Center. She is a staunch mental health advocate and life and leadership blogger at her personal page entitled Sand and Stone, and her brainchild Unsaid Feelings at www.unsaid-feelings.com, which serves as a platform where individuals can write and let their feelings out with no judgment. Dr. Sison also hosts her own digital series on CNN Philippines, G Talks, which talks about life, love, and anything mental health related. She has also launched a project called Padayon PH at padayonph.com, which aims to serve as a mental health resource hub, hoping that more people gain access to resources to safeguard one's mental health, especially in this time of the COVID-19 pandemic. Dear participants, let us all welcome our guest speaker for tonight, Dr. Gia B. Sison. Doc, the virtual floor is yours po.
Hello, good evening, and maraming salamat for inviting me here sa Park Conversations. And I'm with Dr. Nagit also. So thank you, RJ. So yung discussion natin tonight is about wellness for, let's say, advancing age, yung mga older adults. Okay, next slide. So doon muna tayo sa physical changes, no? Kasi alam naman natin yung health, meron siyang physical, mental, and there's a social aspect. So ito po yung mga nangyayari sa katawan natin eventually when we age. So that's why importante yung preventive medicine ika nga. So meron siyang effect sa brain, sa neck area, sa ating puso, and even, and the most common is yung skeletal effect, no? Kaya nagkakaroon ng osteoporosis, etc. So ito yung mga dapat natin iwasan, or kung meron man, doon tayo sa i-maintain lang natin in a healthy level, and always don't forget to follow up with your doctors. Next slide. So speaking of mental health naman, ito po ay base sa WHO. In older age, it's actually mental health and well-being pag pinag-usapan natin. They're equally important in all stages sa ating buhay. And based sa isang study, ang mental and neurological effect disorders among older adults account for around 6.6 of the total disability for this age group. Ibig sabihin, mas may significant effect siya habang nag-i-age po tayo. And approximately 15% ng mga adults na 60 years old pataas suffer from a form of mental disorder. Okay, next slide. So ano-ano nga ba yung mga risk factors when we talk about ill mental health sa ating elderly? So of course, as we all age, lahat tayo nagkakaroon tayo ng naiipon na stress. And that's one thing that can actually affect us. That's why importante ang support group tulad nito na ginagawa ninyo sa National Parks Development Committee para for more awareness, no? And of course, nandiyan yung physical illness, and significant loss ng ating functional capability. Ibig sabihin, hindi na tayo kasing lakas before, no? Nagkakaroon na tayo ng arthritis, etc. And that in itself can affect yung ating activities of daily living. Of course, nandiyan yung mga bereavement, no? As we age, when we retire, no? Meron socio-economic factor yon, and meron rin effect personally kasi syempre nakakamiss din yung makakasama yung mga katrabaho, etc. And of course, meron din tayong aspeto sa ating population na isolated, malungkot, di ba? And in distress. That's why importanteng mag-reach out rin tayo sa ganun. And of course, meron rin tayong tinatawag na elder abuse. Next slide. So ano-ano nga ba yung mga aspects that are or other factors that influence seniors' mental health? So kanina na-mention ko yung physical factors, yung brain, sa heart, etc. There is also an emotional factor that goes with it. No? Self-esteem is one. In terms of memory, that's also one. And coping skills. That's why it's very important that we are aware of elderly in our homes and assist them, no? Lalo na sa ganitong mga panahon. There are social factors, meaning to say, there is this point na naghahanap sila ng something that is meaningful, no, meaningful activity. Kasi syempre sa lahat ng pinagdaanan nila, some may even be deprived of such activities. That's why it's nice to be able to provide a venue for them to express themselves. And of course, merong spiritual factors, kahit ano namang religion, it's all about balancing also on things that we can control. That is the spiritual aspect of it. And of course, andyan yung housing. Mention ko lang yung mga ibang factors like housing, transportation, services, of course yung mga health services, and of course income. Next slide. So ito yung mga early symptoms pag pinag-uusapan natin yung mga possible mental health problems. No? Number one is nagkakaroon tayo ng loss of interest. Example, dati, gustong-gusto nyo pumunta sa parks, etc. or even socialize, and then suddenly you find yourself na you wanna isolate. Reduced appetite, irregular sleep hygiene, which actually happens. Pero kapag dumadating sa point na affected na yung quality of life, doon na po yung nagkakaroon ng problems. Decline in hygiene, yes, and irregular moods, which comes with really aging. Next slide. So, one common concern sa ating elderly is what we call dementia. Now, pag sinabi nating dementia, it's actually chronic. It cannot happen like one time, no? And it's progressive in nature. So, anong nangyayari pagka may dementia ang isang individual? So, there's decline in memory, of course, thinking, and sometimes affected ang behavior. That's why it's also equally important to recognize this. However, hindi naman automatic when we age that is equivalent to dementia. But these are some common mental health concerns. Next slide. And of course, depression. You've all heard about, and I'm sure you've heard about depression as one major concern kapag dating sa mental health. And this is actually common din sa elderly. And of course, disclaimer lang, hindi po ito diagnostic talk. But when we talk about depression, clinical depression, persistent sadness siya that lasts longer than 2 weeks. Talagang dire-diretso siya. And may changes in sleep, in eating habits, and yung iba, merong suicidal ideations. This is considered an emergency. Okay? Next slide. And there is also substance abuse. Yes, that's not only common in the younger population, but there is also those in the elderly. Meaning to say, alcohol is there. And this can actually contribute sa low mood and difficulty in sleeping and poor memory. And of course, it can damage physical health. Next slide. Okay, so ano nga ba? So what should be done to address the needs of our elderly, no? Number one, early diagnosis, no? Lahat tayo, we've heard of the saying that prevention is better than cure. However, we acknowledge na hindi naman ito nangyayari all the time. But it's important na alamin natin, no, ano yung mga posibleng nangyayari sa ating elderly. We have to optimize physical health, no? Physical, mental health by reading a lot and even talking, no? Kasi malaking nagagawa yung support system when it comes to proper functioning. And of course, kapag existing na yung illness, example, very common ang hypertension, very common ang diabetes, these are all controlled dapat. And to detect and manage challenging behavior and providing information as well and long-term support para din sa mga nag-aalaga sa kanila. Next slide. So napag-usapan na natin yung mga nangyayari, no, sa ating mga elderly. So now we go to coping with the negative impacts of aging to our mental health. Next slide. So this is one aspect that I think lahat tayo, no, we have to learn how to do. And that's to practice radical acceptance pa nga. No? And acceptance is actually comes in many forms. And nandito na rin kasama yung accepting that there are physiological changes in our body, the things we have lost, and role transitioning. Nag-iiba-iba tayong mga role sa buhay. And that's, I think, for me, we have to start somewhere. And it is what it is. Minsan, ika nga, di ba? Parang nangyayari yan as we age. Next slide. Ask for and accept help from others. In a system, we cannot function alone. There are some aspects sa ating buhay that we really need to reach out, no? To ask for help. And if others will offer their help, tanggapin natin ng buong puso because that is part of the whole ecosystem, no? Seek assistance from family members and of course, delegate the responsibilities kasi mahirap din kapag inaako lahat ng mga ginagawa because that will lead to unhealthy practices. Next slide. And practice positive affirmation. Hindi po ito yung toxic positivity, no? Positive affirmation are just statements that we tell ourselves. Karamihan, tayo mismo yung nagsasabotahe sa ating sarili. So we have to ask ourselves, what do we tell ourselves every day? Diba? So papaano to gagawin? It's actually, number one, think about the areas in your life that you'd like to change. Number two, make sure na yung sinasabi niyo sa sarili ninyo or sa atin is something that is credible and achievable. Number three, yung mga negative and challenging thoughts, i-challenge natin yun. To try to turn it into something that is optimistic. And say it with feeling also and with conviction. Example, it can start as simple as lilipas din itong araw na to, today, tomorrow will be better. Something like that, no? So the practice of positive affirmation can actually help us cope. Lalo na sa mga panahon ngayon na sobrang hirap, no? And lahat sabay-sabay nangyayari. Next slide. And one is providing psychosocial support also. And how do we do that? Spending quality time with adults. Kailangan rin natin ng bonding na sinasabi, no? And allow spaces where we can actually, or they, our elderly, can talk about how they feel without them being judged na, ganito siya kasi wala yan, sa age lang yan. Something like that, no? All feelings are valid and their feelings also need to be expressed. And we have to provide that space where they can talk about it freely, no? And ngayon, physical bonding is not possible. However, social platforms like online platforms like this should be maximized. And pero of course, ita-time din natin kasi hindi rin naman healthy na 24 hours tayo nasa screen. So psychosocial support is important. Next slide. So ito pong slide na to or itong graph na to, galing po ito sa isang study from Harvard School of Public Health last year lang. Pinag-aralan nila yung emotional management. And based on their study, the sooner we express our emotion, the better we cope. Versus, alam mo, nandun yung problema pero iniiwasan mo, which will result to piling up na ayaw natin mangyari. That is why self-expression, self-awareness is very important, no? Para malabas din natin and for us to better manage our emotions. Next slide. And who to talk to? Andyan yung family and friends, no? Someone who is not your friend, meaning to say someone who is a stranger, kasi sometimes nakakatulong yun eh. And these are the specialist knowledge, no? And someone who is more objective, kasi sometimes pagka pamilya ang kausap mo, bias, no? So consider that on the list na pag tinanong ninyo sino yung kakausapin ko. And of course, a person whom you trust, because confidentiality is important, such as a counselor, a psychologist, and even a friend. So these are some people that you can talk to. Next slide. Conversations, this is a reminder that conversations don't have to be all about life's difficulties. Diba? Pwede rin natin pagkwentuhan naman yung mga events na you enjoy. And that's something that we need more than ever kasi ang bigat na nangyayari lately eh, no? And for many months we've been into this situation. So sometimes pag-usap, it's nice also to talk about happy things, diba? So these are some coping mechanisms na pwede nating gawin in our daily lives. Next slide. And then of course, yung physical wellness, we have to all ensure that they get exercise. So kung may kasama po kayo sa bahay na elderly, make sure may movement at least 30 minutes a day, physical exercise, kahit po naglalakad lang, back and forth, if kung space po ay limited. And then yung sleep. Yes, there are changes as we age. Sleep becomes really less. But it doesn't mean that kailangan hindi quality yung sleep. And make sure they eat well and it's a balanced diet. Next slide. Why do we need to do physical exercise? Because it actually really boosts, no? Nakaka-boost po yan ng endorphin, which is a feel-good hormone. No? And this, kapag may exercise tayo, it will convert to better sleep. And then it offers a chance to meet people eventually po kapag nag-die down na po yung numbers. And being active doesn't have to cost money, no? Kasi yun nga, no, as the National Parks Development Committee is advocating for madami tayong parks that we can actually enjoy safely, no? And it can actually be an effective antidepressant medication in treating mild to moderate depression. That's why physical exercise is really highly encouraged. Next slide. And sa tulog, importante rin yan. So papaano, ano ba yung mga barriers sa good tulog na sinasabi? So andyan yung too much caffeine, if an elderly is in pain, medication, and going to the toilet can actually be barriers to good sleep. So how do we address that? Yung nap na tinatawag, kapag natutulog sa hapon, it has to be limited to 30 minutes or less. And as much as possible, wag na sana beyond 2 p.m. kasi affected na yung sleep eventually. Exercise is there. Number 3, iwasan natin yung pagkain na that can actually be disruptive sa sleep. pagkain or drinks, that includes caffeine. Yung exposure natin sa light, we have to at least limit it na after 6 or 7 p.m. kasi nakaka-affect yan sa sleep. And make sure also that the environment is pleasant. So these are some tips dito sa may kaliwa for good quality sleep. Next slide. And eat a balanced diet, no? May mga studies na yung traditional or Western-based diets, they seem to have an effect to lower the risk for depression. Although kailangan pa ng more studies dito. And there are ongoing studies that omega-3 can be an adjunct to treat or manage depression. And of course, when we talk about balanced diet, we have to reduce yung caffeine intake, sugar, and too much processed food. Next slide. And this is very important to be mentally active. Yung mga crossword puzzles, kung ganyan, Sudoku, word searches, they're actually very effective to keep our mental health or brain active. Yung pagbabasa, playing games, they actually are very helpful in terms of memory. No? So, madami pong exercises sa YouTube na pwedeng gawin to basta everyday kailangan i-practice. Because this actually really helps a lot to at least yung memory is to keep it alive, no? So to speak. Next slide. And build an agency. When we say agency, it's really to encourage them, our elderly, to take care of their own needs as much as possible and encourage them to be self-sufficient, no? Para maging aware sila that they have to take care of themselves. So, yes, it is okay to remind, but it's nice to encourage them to make that a habit. Next slide. And prepare plans. Kasi, of course, we do not know what is going to happen. Life transitions, diba? To unexpected events. So, it pays to be prepared and be flexible with a plan as needed. Next slide. So ano-ano nga ba yung mga issues that can possibly need preparation? Andyan yung retirement plans, your plans for how you're gonna be physically active, pensions, financial considerations. These are actually all, these are 8 amongst so much more pa, no? But bottom line is we really have to face them one at a time. And dito na rin papasok yung delegation of tasks and asking for help. Because again, it's okay to plan with family. Next slide. And communicate well. When we say well, transparent, claro. However, we have to consider also that hearing changes can occur. But communication should be there. Next slide. And ensure that we are prepared kapag may emergency. Again, we have to develop an emergency plan. Yung mga go-to packs, like prepare a go-to bag na nandun lahat ng mga gamit just in case na may earthquake, etc., typhoon. It's better to be really prepared and keep on your phone a list of emergency hotlines. Kasama po yan talaga lahat sa planning kasi that can actually save lives. Next slide. And care for others. And caring for others can keep relationships actually strong and people close. And helping others makes us feel needed also and valued. So self first, and then care for others. Next slide. So that ends my talk for you this evening. So kung may mga tanong po, ina-open po yung floor for any questions.
Ayan po, maraming salamat, Doc Gia, sa insightful presentation po na inyong ibinahagi sa amin. Para po sa pagdiriwang, of course, ng Elderly Filipino Week. Ayan, at bago po tayo magpatuloy sa ating programa, babatiin ko lamang din po ang ating mga viewers. both sa Zoom and sa Facebook Live, sa ating Facebook Live ngayon. So shout out kila Angelo Noel Manuel, John Den Matibag, 𝘕𝘂𝘀𝘀 Manay, and Wesley Hinal. Para naman po sa ating mga Facebook viewers, magandang gabi po kila Ma'am Jovita Butardo, Ma'am Imelda Hona, Alicia Galope, Alberto Puno, Roland Fadrilan, ayan, Angel Tadeo, Catherine Guadalupe, Rosini Montanya, and sino pa? Ayan, Joselito Malveda, ayan, Peter Emlano, Freddy Santillan, Mabel Musa, Corazon Judith, Dit Manapsal, ayan, Dinan Cruz, Ben Vargas, Erlene Buhain, Romero James, Ray Cruz, John Noel de la Cruz, Ronaldo Dingle, Eduardo Villalon, and Marilu Abad. Ayan, kapansin-pansin po na mostly po sa ating mga viewers ngayong gabi ay mga ka-maintenance na po, kumbaga. Ayan. So nakakatuwa pong malaman na unti-unti na pong nade-destigmatize ang mental health issues, ano po. At napaka-espesyal ng episode nating ito dahil nakasentro naman ang ating discussion sa isang specific na group sa ating community, which is yung mga Filipino senior citizens or yung ating mga elders, kumbaga. Sa puntong ito ay pakikinggan naman po natin ang mga katanungan ng ating mga Zoom participants. Ayan, muli paalala po para sa ating mga participants sa Zoom, maaari po kayong maglagay ng inyong tanong sa ating Q&A button, at para naman po sa ating mga Facebook viewers, maaari po kayong mag-comment ng inyong mga katanungan. So, Doc Gia, para po simulan ng ating open forum, ito po ang unang katanungan. So, mayroon po bang kaugnayan ang emerging Filipino concept ng family sa well-being ng ating older adults?
Isang actually very subjective, no? Iba-iba yung pananaw natin. Pero I would say meron, no? Kasi kahit papaano, kasi unfortunately, yung iba, yung family mismo ang nagiging source ng toxicity or problem. Dito ngayon pumapasok yung outside support system na sinasabi. But it doesn't mean naman that we have to totally change the concept of family. It just means na kailangan mas ma-acknowledge natin that there is support outside the family also. So, yan po yung sagot ko sana nakatulong po.
Okay po. So, follow up lang po dun sa question na yun, Doc Gia, kasi siguro kaya yung ibang family nagiging sila mismo yung source ng toxicity doon sa para sa ating mga older adults, maybe because hindi rin nila alam sa sarili nila on how to act. So maybe you could help paano po ba yung, kumbaga, paano natin dapat i-treat yung ating mga older adults? Do we treat them like they are sensitive people, or do we treat them as our equals? Yung paano po yung treatment?
Iba-iba kasi yung concept natin, and we are iba-iba tayo ng pananaw. But I would say na listening to them, kasi ang listening, it has to be two-way. Meron kasi, yung iba kasi meron na silang fixed mindset as they age. And that is something that we need to kind of accept. I can come from a place na tulad ng parents ko, meron na silang fixed concept of, example, success. And that's something that I need to accept within me na hindi ko na makokontrol. So dito na pumapasok yung kaninang discuss ko, that there are really some things that hindi natin makokontrol, pero pwede natin kontrolin within us. And behavior is one. So, yun. I think I will start there, because it all starts there, with acceptance, with communication, listening to understand them, and making sure na yung message comes across clearly. And not to lose hope, kasi sometimes paulit-ulit lang and they get it. So, yun.
Thank you for that po, Doc Gia. Ayan, for our next question, ito po ay galing sa ating mga Zoom participants po. Dr. Gia, kindly expound on toxic positivity and self-sabotage. Thank you.
Okay, yung sa toxic positivity kasi, that's a kind of mentality na parang no matter what happens, ang nasa mind mo, positive lang. So you tend to, it has a tendency na i-invalidate yung mga iba that is, having negative thoughts. Dito na pumapasok yung, that is why yung all feelings are valid. That's a very important statement because it is, di ba? Hindi rin naman lahat ng araw is okay. So that's toxic positivity. Now, self-sabotage is really more of ano yung mga sinasabi mo sa sarili mo? Is it something na makakatulong sa'yo or is it something na lalo kang maaapektuhan? Example, nagsisimula yan na I'll never make it. Yung parang hopeless na ako. Wala talagang makakatulong sa akin. Parang ganong mga kailangan maging sensitive tayo sa mga patterns of thinking natin kasi minsan or most of the time, it affects how we, yung perspective natin. So that's self-sabotage. That is why, yun nga yung sinasabi ko na kanina, we have to be careful sa mga sinasabi natin sa sarili natin. So, positive affirmations can actually help.
Ayun. Thank you po, Doc Gia. Ang next question po natin, paano po naapektuhan ng pandemya ang mental, physical, at social health ng older adults?
Number one, yung pandemya, we all know that mas higher risk yung mga elderly natin. Lalo na kapag may mga comorbidities na sinasabi, tulad ng high blood, sabi mo nga, ka-maintenance, no? May ganun term na ako naririnig ngayon. In terms of mental health, yung isolation in itself is affecting us kasi syempre, basically, we are social beings Gusto natin na may kasama physically na mga tao, yung mga support system, but now it's not possible. And actually, sa computer pa lang, challenge na ang ating mga elderly Kaya nagpapaturo na sila paano ba gumamit ng mga platforms, di ba? Yun yung mga,
Yes.
those are some concerns. So I think that, physical, getting sick. In fact, may point sa pandemic na very overlooked na yung mga sakit outside COVID. Take into example, people who are hindi nakakapag-follow up dahil walang time or walang chance. So, sana hindi natin makaligtaan yung mga ganun.
Ayan, thank you po, Doc Gia. So, ang atin pong next question, paano po maaaring ma-overcome ng older adults ang pandemic challenges sa tulong po ng pamilya?
Suporta talaga. Constant communication and doing things together with them, no? Example, yung kaninang minention ko na mental health activities, encourage them to exercise. Importante kasi yung gumalaw Because dito sa situation natin, we tend to step back. Kasi nga napapagod na tayo, nakakulong, for lack of a better term, sa isang place na hindi talaga tayo sanay. But we really have to be supportive of each other. So exercise, magkwentuhan kayo. Kasi nakakatulong yun to establish at least yung lungkot na nandoon to help ease it. Yun ang mga suggestions ko.
Okay po. Another question po. Good evening po. Paano po yung mga taong napamahal nasa kanilang mental problem kaya hindi na po sila naghahanap ng tulong sa iba? This is sad.
Paano po yung mga taong napamahal na sa
Kanilang mental problem?
Yung nasanay na?
Yes po, opo. Kaya hindi na sila kumbaga nagre-reach out sa iba.
Okay, nangyayari ito, pero siguro dito papasok again, paulit-ulit yung support system. I think may times sa buhay natin that yun yung, I think may self-sabotage na angle dito eh. But it doesn't, you don't have to stop talking about it with them. Parang ganon. Although it may seem na mukhang sanay na sila sa kanilang mental health problem, but that doesn't mean that they will not get over it. Something like that. That's why constant communication is very important. And ito, establishing yung space ba na pagka nag-open up sila, huwag naman sila i-judge na wala lang yan. Yun yung mga remarks kasi na hindi nakakatulong para sa isang tao na mag-open up, para sa isang tao na maging ready para pag-usapan yung kanyang pinagdadaanan.
Follow-up question po doon, Doc Gia, kasi paano po ba kapag halimbawang may nag-approach sa'yo na merong nagsabi siya sa'yo ng mga problems niya, ganyan, and then how, as someone na nakaka-receive ng mga ganun, how should I react po ba dapat? Like, ano yung mga tamang salita na sabihin? Kasi sabi niyo nga po, merong mga salitang hindi naman nakakatulong and dapat iwasan. So, ano po kaya yung mga pwedeng sabihin, kumbaga?
Well, number one, listening is key. Diba? Kasi most of the time kasi nakikinig lang tayo. Pero meron na tayong reaction na nakaplano. So, it will help if you listen to try to understand kung saan nanggagaling yung isang individual. Kasi lahat tayo may pinanggagalingan. So that's one, no? We have to understand. Number two, sana maiwasan din natin yung, well, advice is actually given if needed. So, minsan, or most of the time, we need people to listen to us. So, kapag hindi naman needed yung advice, let's not go there. Parang ganon. Ano pa ba? Assurance that you will be there if they need anything. Para kasi sa akin, that's very personal and very assuring, parang very encouraging. That you know that you are assured that you'll be helped if and when they need help. So, listening, assuring, and yeah, I think just being there for the person will mean a lot.
Okay po. Thank you so much po sa inyong naging kasagutan po dyan. Another question po. Paano po natin mapipilit ang mga elderly na magpa-vaccine against COVID? Madami pa rin po ang ayaw magpabakuna.
It helps if you share your experiences. Never stop talking about COVID awareness and the importance ng pagpapabakuna. Kasi let's face it, no, majority ng cases ng hospitalization at severe cases are those na hindi nabakunahan. So continue to talk to them about it. Alam ko mahirap kasi yung iba talaga is pero na silang certain belief. Pero that shouldn't stop us from talking about it and keep on encouraging them to have themselves vaccinated.
Okay po. Thank you po. Ito po another question. Doc Gia, do you have any self-help techniques that you can share to help us cope with the anxiety and stress brought by the pandemic?
Number one is may mga exercises na pwede natin gawin, such as yung deep breathing exercises. Example, yung 4-7-8 na technique, no? Mag-inhale ka for 4 counts, you hold your breath for 7 counts, and then you exhale for 8 counts. Parang don't forget to breathe. So the mas madalas yung gawin, mas better siya. Ngayon, may since lahat tayo, we are all parang with our phones, etc. May mga apps that are really helpful. Example, ginagamit ko kasi yung Calm app. That's very helpful in terms of guided breathing, guided meditation, etc. So, I use that. Tapos another one is to talk about how you feel also with your family. And know when to rest. Kasi hindi naman, that's actually a much needed um, aspect na na-overlook natin. So, yun.
Doc Gia, balikan lang po natin yung tungkol sa breathing, ano na nabanggit niyo. Kasi mukhang kailangan ng lahat ito dahil lahat tayo nai-stress.
Yes,
7,
try nyo.
4.
Parang inhale kayo ng 4. And then
Yes.
you hold your breath for 7 seconds.
7 seconds.
And then exhale kayo ng 8 counts.
4, 7, 8.
4, 7, 8. Or
Yes.
meron rin naman na may box breathing rin. So imagine na nasa box ka. So inhale for example 4 counts. And then hold your breath for 4 counts ulit. And then exhale ka ng 4 counts. And then hold your breath ng 4. So parang you're imagining yourself na nasa box ka. And that actually helps helps yourself relax. Lalo na kapag parang hyper lahat ng emotions. Yun.
Ayan. Thank you for that. Ay, may bago tayong natutunan kay Doc Gia ngayong araw na to, yung tungkol sa breathing. Ayan. Another question po is, ito po, paano i-approach ang mga taong suicidal po?
Well, suicidal ideation is considered an emergency. So make sure na may kasama yung tao lagi. Number 2, may ita-type po kami sa chat box. This is actually very helpful. Kapag tinype niyo po yan sa browser, lahat po ng mga CSOs that are offering free to low-cost mental health service is available there. Ayan po, tinype na po ni Dr. Nagit. Because that has to be addressed eh. Tapos, kailangan ilayo din lahat ng mga bagay na pwedeng na maka-harm doon sa isang individual. But the most important part is physical support. And never take it lightly kasi minsan na may mention lang yan. And you'll take that as a joke. It's never a joke po. It always has to be taken seriously.
Ayan. So, para po sa ating mga viewers sa Facebook, ano po, kasi shinare lang ni Dr. Nagit ang link dito sa ating Zoom. So, wait lang po. I-share ko lang siya sa ating mga participants sa Facebook. There. And ayan, so nag-shoutout po ko kanina. I-shoutout ko lang din po si Juan Carlos Antonio Apilar. Hindi pa po siya ka-maintenance, siya po ang aming Deputy Executive Director. Hello, Dep. Thank you for watching po. Ayan. And Doc Gia, so ito po ang isa sa mga last question po natin, ano? Doc, mayroon po kayong masasuggest na wellness activities na accessible at kaya pong ma-accomplish ng senior citizens sa kani-kanilang mga bahay even with limited resources or equipment po?
Physical activities that we can do, yun ba yung question?
Yes.
Alam mo yung stepping in place that actually helps. Yung iba kasi limited yung physical space eh. So walking back and forth can actually help. Stretching, right? That actually helps. Because before heavy exercise, we stretch. So, yun, those are no cost at all yan kasi within you naman yung yung resources. So, pwede natin yung gawin.
Ayan. And Doc, may pahabol po pala na question, ano? Maraming elderly na pasan pa nila ang problema ng mga anak nila at sa kanila pa umaasa. How can we spare our elders from this so they can enjoy their retiring years?
For me kasi that's a very personal challenge. No? So I think it has something to do rin sa family dynamics. It really has to come to a point na kailangan mag-usap-usap yung pamilya and not really depend on the parents. But again, unfortunately, it happens. Pero it can start with communicating. So, mag-start muna tayo sa basic. And then, yun, it pays to have a plan rin. Kasi most of the time, ito yung mga things that are unplanned. So, gumawa kayo ng list kung ano yung mga dapat i-address, pag-usapan, para pag nag-meeting kayo, meeting, family meeting, naka-ano siya, parang naka-list na.
Ayan. So maraming salamat po, Doc Gia, sa pagsagot sa mga tanong ng ating live viewers both sa Zoom and sa Facebook. Marami po kaming natutunan sa ating Q&A sessions, especially yung breathing technique. Ayan, hindi ko makakalimutan yan sa'yo, Doc Gia. At upang formal at upang formal pong isara ang ating Q&A session, maaari po ba naming marinig ang inyong concluding statements para sa older adults, kanilang families, at communities na kanilang kinabibilang?
No, para sa akin, I just like to thank everybody. No? Maraming salamat sa National Parks Development Committee for holding this event. And para po sa mga seniors natin, nandito po kami for you. Huwag po natin kakalimutan yung alagaan yung sarili natin, not only physically, but also mentally, and let's never forget yung social connection natin sa isa't isa. So, matatapos din po itong pandemya, hindi lang po natin alam kung kailan, pero sabi nga, this too shall pass. So, maraming salamat po, tsaka ingat po palagi.
Ayan. Thank you so much po mula po sa lahat ng bumubuo ng NPDC. Taos-puso po kaming nagpapasalamat sa pagbabahagi ng mahahalagang impormasyon po sa publiko tungkol sa pag-advocate para sa wellness ng Filipino older adults. At ayan, at para naman po sa ating participants, sana po ay nagkaroon tayo ng appreciation sa ating mga lolo, lola, manang at manong. At sana matulungan natin silang maging malusog at masigla ngayong pandemya sa ating mga sariling pamamaraan. Sa pagkakataong ito, amin pong igagawad ang sertipiko ng pagkilala sa ating tagapagsalita. Ayan. There. Ayan. So muli maraming salamat po, Doc Gia, at sa ating mga participants sa parehong Zoom at Facebook platforms. Babasahin ko lamang po ang nilalaman ng ating certificate. So National Parks Development Committee and Department of Tourism award this certificate of appreciation to Dr. Gia B. Sison for sharing her valuable insights and knowledge on the webinar Wellness for Older Adults, given this 7th of October 2021 via Zoom video conference. Signed, Cecil Lorenzana Romero, Executive Director. Congratulations po, Doc Gia.
Thank you. And then thank you rin po sa Department of Tourism. Maraming salamat. And sana maulit muli. So,
yes, of course po. Ayan. So, pero bago po tayo tuluyang magpaalam, ayan, I'm sure inaabangan to ng ating mga ka-maintenance na nag-submit ng kanilang mga photos sa Rizal Litrato Contest. Ayan, atin pong babatiin ng congratulations na malutong ang mga nagwagi sa ating hashtag Rizal Litrato Contest. Ayan, at ang tatlong entries na nakatanggap ng pinakamaraming likes sa NPDC Facebook page as of 5 p.m. Ngayong araw ang tatanghalin nating winners. Ayan. So, ayan. Without further ado, ang winners po natin. Para sa third place ay si Joselito Malveda. Ayan po ang kanyang kuha. Congratulations, Sir Joselito Malveda. Kasama niya po ang kanyang pamilya sa Rizal Park po ito. Ayan, next. Para sa ating second place winner naman, ay walang iba kundi si Ma'am Alice Galope. Ayan, congratulations, Ma'am Alice. Ang kanyang kuha naman pong ito ay mula sa Children's Playground. Ayan, wala na pong taon, kung anong taon, pero kita naman po natin sa kulay ng litrato. Ayan. At ang syempre nagwagi sa kanilang lahat, ang pinakamasipag magpa-like ng kanyang pictures ay si Sir Julian Soriano. At ang kuha niya pong ito ay sa Japanese garden. Ayan, congratulations po sa inyong lahat and happy Elderly Filipino Week pong muli. Ayan, magkita-kita po tayong muli sa susunod na Park Conversations. Ako po ulit si Mayan. At maraming salamat po at magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat, ating mga ka-maintenance. Bye po!
Para makakuha ng digital certificate, pakisagutan po ang maikling survey na matatagpuan sa Zoom chat box at Facebook Live comment section. Makatutulong ito upang mapagbuti pa namin sa NPDC ang kalidad ng aming mga programa at proyekto. Kung nag-enjoy kayo sa ating online program ngayong gabi, paki-follow kami sa aming social media accounts upang maging updated sa iba pang makabuluhang programa at proyekto. Para sa Facebook, paki-like ang aming Facebook page sa facebook.com/npdc.ph. Para sa Instagram, paki-follow ang npdc.ph. Para sa Twitter, npdc_ph. At para sa YouTube, mag-subscribe sa National Parks Development Committee. Hinihikayat po namin ang lahat na i-share ito sa kanilang mga kaibigan sa social media.